That animal is in direct violation of the Palm Grove Estate's pet prohibition. I have told you this repeatedly. Every single day that dog is on this property is another $400 fine against your deed. I have $8,500 in fines against your property right now, and I am initiating foreclosure proceedings this week. If that dog is not gone, I will take it. Homeowners Association President Brenda Carmichael told the homeowner at 42 Cypress Court that his continued failure to remove his dog had left the board no choice but to act. Despite 8 formal violation notices and $8,500 in accumulated fines, he refused to comply. So, she initiated foreclosure proceedings through the Palm Beach County Property Records Office. All because she had lost her cat 2 months earlier and had decided that if she could not have a pet, absolutely nobody else in the neighborhood could either. What she didn't know was that her emergency pet ban was an illegal board action. Her own HOA attorney had privately advised against it, and the homeowner had recorded every interaction. She also didn't know that the lawsuit she was about to file over a dog chase that ended with her on the curb was going to expose everything in a single courtroom appearance. It would reveal the illegal ban, the fabricated fines, and 9 years of unchecked authority, ending her presidency before the lunch recess even began. Arthur Sterling, 43, a senior financial analyst for a private wealth management firm based out of Miami, had lived at 42 Cypress Court in Boca Raton, Florida, for 5 years. Palm Grove Estates sat in Palm Beach County. It was an upscale neighborhood where the entrance had a staffed security booth and homes started at over $1 million. The HOA dues were steep enough that residents expected professionalism in return. Arthur had bought his property after years of building his successful career. He had beautifully renovated the back garden into a landscaped space that drew compliments from every neighbor on Cypress Court. He was organized, steady, and respected. Arthur had never once received a legitimate complaint from anyone in the community. Buster had been with Arthur for 4 years. He was a large, energetic, and deeply affectionate German Shepherd. Buster had never bitten anyone, never damaged any property, and had been licensed, vaccinated, and registered with Palm Beach County every single year since Arthur brought him home. Buster was walked on a leash every morning and every evening. He used the back garden during the day and had become something of a quiet fixture on Cypress Court. Neighbors would wave at Arthur and then look past him just to see where Buster was. He was exactly that kind of good dog. Brenda Carmichael, 57, had been the HOA president of Palm Grove Estates for 9 consecutive years. She ran the board with a specific combination of strict procedural control and personal investment. This made her simultaneously difficult to challenge and completely exhausting to live near. Her cat, a Persian named Pearl that she had owned for 11 years, had passed away in late August. The veterinarian had described the passing as complications related to age and diet. The neighborhood had sent cards, and 2 residents had even brought her flowers. Brenda had accepted the condolences with the cold composure of someone storing their grief somewhere deep. It would eventually come out differently later. 3 weeks after Pearl died, Brenda called an emergency board meeting at the Palm Grove Estates clubhouse on Cypress Court and aggressively pushed through a community-wide pet prohibition. No dogs, no cats, no birds, no animals of any kind on any residential property within the subdivision. She falsely framed it to the board as a necessary community health and safety measure. Her own HOA attorney had sent her a private email the morning before the meeting. He explicitly advised her that the policy would absolutely not survive a legal challenge. She called the meeting anyway and pushed it through with only 3 board members present. This was one short of the quorum required under the governing documents for a policy change of that scope. Arthur received the notice the following morning and read it twice in disbelief. Then he looked at Buster, sitting happily at his feet, and decided the notice was not worth the paper it was printed on. Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where you're tuning in from. And if you believe that no HOA president has the right to ban every pet in a neighborhood just because she lost her own, hit that like and subscribe button and join us here on HOA Unhinged. The first violation notice arrived in Arthur's mailbox 4 days after the pet ban was pushed through. It cited Buster as an unauthorized animal on the premises in violation of the new health policy. It also attached a ridiculous $400 fine. Arthur photographed the notice, pulled up the Palm Grove Estates governing documents from the Palm Beach County Clerk's website, and spent the evening reading. What he found was completely straightforward. The governing documents required a full quorum of 5 board members for any policy change affecting residential property use. The emergency meeting Brenda had called only had 3 members present. Therefore, the pet ban had absolutely no legal foundation and never had any real authority to begin with. He sent a formal, written response to the HOA board the following week. He cited the specific section of the governing documents that completely invalidated the hasty vote. He noted that he would not be removing Buster and would absolutely not be paying the fine. He kept his tone highly professional and his language legally precise. Then, he went right back to walking Buster every single morning on Cypress Court, the exact same way he always had. Brenda's spiteful response was to file another notice, and then another. The fines arrived with increasing frequency. There were noise complaints about a dog that the neighbors on both sides of Arthur had never once mentioned hearing. There were property damage citations with no specific damage identified. There was an aesthetic violation citing Buster's outdoor kennel as an unapproved structure. This was despite the kennel sitting entirely within Arthur's back garden, completely out of sight from the street. Each notice cited the illegal pet ban as its primary authority. Each one was filed after Arthur had already submitted written documentation proving the ban was legally void. By the end of October, the accumulated fines against Arthur's deed reached $8,500. Brenda had even begun referencing foreclosure proceedings in her angry correspondence. Arthur paid nothing, removed nothing, and forwarded every notice to his property rights attorney in Miami. His lawyer, Marcus Dalton, had handled HOA overreach cases in Palm Beach County for over a decade. Marcus confirmed exactly what Arthur already knew. Not a single fine was enforceable. The pet ban was a complete legal nullity. Furthermore, Brenda's personal motivation for pushing it through was documented clearly enough in the timeline to support a massive harassment claim. Other residents in Palm Grove Estates had quietly surrendered their pets after the ban was announced. 2 terrified families had rehomed their beloved dogs to avoid the massive fines. One elderly resident had heartbreakingly given her cat to her daughter rather than fight the board. None of them had been told that the ban had absolutely no legal standing in the community. None of them had known to check the rules. Arthur was the only one who had pulled the governing documents and read them carefully enough to understand exactly what Brenda had done. And he was the only one still proudly walking his dog on Cypress Court every morning, acting like the absurd notice had never even arrived. Brenda definitely noticed his defiance. She watched Arthur and Buster from her driveway on more mornings than Arthur bothered counting. The dog walked past her house at the exact same time every day. Brenda stood there watching with the dark expression of a woman building towards something terrible. Arthur kept walking, and Buster kept trotting beside him without a care in the world. The fabricated fines kept coming. Arthur kept filing them securely in the folder on his desk and going to bed without losing a single night of sleep over the empty threats. Then, one afternoon, Brenda decided the written notices were not enough. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Arthur was sitting on his front porch with a cold drink and a good book. Buster was lying calmly at his feet in the shade, completely relaxed, with one ear occasionally lifting at a passing car. The street was peaceful, the way Cypress Court always was on a weekday. Arthur had no reason to expect anything unusual and was not looking for a fight. Brenda came marching across the street at 3:40 p.m. with her clipboard tightly gripped and her lanyard swinging. She carried the specific, chaotic energy of a woman who had been building toward this confrontation for weeks. She stopped at the bottom of Arthur's porch steps and launched into it immediately. She yelled about the pet ban, the unpaid fines, and the foreclosure threat. All of it was delivered at full volume, with the clipboard aggressively gesturing toward Buster the entire time. She was loud, she was relentless, and she showed absolutely no sign of stopping her tirade. Arthur sat quietly in his chair and said nothing. He took a slow sip of his cold drink. He did not stand up. He did not raise his voice. He just looked at Brenda from his porch chair with the calm expression of a man who had heard everything she was saying many times before. He had simply stopped finding her tantrums interesting. Then he casually reached down and unclipped Buster's leash. Buster stood up, looked at Brenda at the bottom of the steps, and made a decision. He bounded down the porch steps with the full, joyful enthusiasm of a large German shepherd who had just found something incredibly fun to chase. He went directly for her. Brenda screamed in pure terror, dropped her clipboard, and ran for her life. She made it down Cypress Court at a speed that surprised everyone who later heard the hilarious story. Her arms were pumping and her lanyard was flying, with Buster bounding happily behind her the whole way. His tail was wagging, absolutely delighted with the fun new game of chase. She caught her foot on the curb at the end of the block and went down hard on the pavement. Buster stopped, sniffed her once to see if she was okay, and trotted happily back up the street. He returned right to Arthur's porch. Arthur had not left his comfortable chair once during the entire ordeal. Brenda filed her lawsuit against Arthur the following week. She cited dangerous animal negligence and personal injury from the fall on the curb. She submitted it with the exact same blind confidence she brought to every HOA enforcement action she had ever taken. She was absolutely certain that her title and her paperwork would carry the day the way they always had. Marcus Dalton filed the legal response 4 days later, and it was incredibly thorough. The first argument was trespass. Brenda had walked onto Arthur's private property uninvited. She had not been invited up the porch steps and was standing on his land without permission. Under Florida law, a property owner bears significantly reduced liability for incidents involving trespassers on their own land. The second argument was clear provocation. Brenda had approached the property aggressively, had been yelling at the edge of the steps, and had created the stressful conditions for the dog's completely natural response herself. The third argument was the pet ban itself. Marcus attached the full governing documents analysis, proving the ban was illegally enacted without a quorum and had never been valid. The judge heard the case in the Palm Beach County Circuit Court and quickly ruled in Arthur's favor on every single count. The trespass finding alone was sufficient to dismiss her injury claim. The pet ban was formally declared null and void, entered into the public record as an unauthorized, illegal board action. Every fine Brenda had issued against Arthur's deed was instantly dismissed. All $8,500 of it was wiped away, and Brenda was personally ordered to pay his full legal fees. The HOA board permanently removed Brenda from the presidency within a week of the final judgment. The two families who had rehomed their dogs after the legal ban was announced filed their own massive claims against the board shortly after. Sadly, the elderly resident who had given her cat to her daughter never got that precious time back. Arthur walked Buster down Cypress Court the morning after the judgment exactly the same way. He had walked him every morning for 4 years. Buster trotted beside him without a care in the world. Nobody watched angrily from any driveway, and absolutely nobody filed any fake notices. The street was quiet, and it finally stayed that way. If this story reminded you that a leash unclipped at the right moment can sometimes do what months of paperwork could not, share this video. Send it to someone who needs a good laugh and a reminder that justice occasionally has 4 legs and a wagging tail. And if you have a story about a crazy HOA president who turned a personal loss into everyone else's massive problem, drop it in the comments. We will tell that story. See you right here on HOA Unhinged.